to say hello to our guests?
Yep, that'll work.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First National Bank Alaska's Financial Fraud Prevention and Trends webinar. I'm Lewis Ulmer, Business Development Manager here at First National Bank Alaska. And on behalf of the entire bank, thank you for joining us today for what we hope you will find to be valuable information on a very important topic. Our host and presenter today is First National Information Security Officer, James Estes. James, like to say hello to our guests?
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is James Estes. It's a pleasure to be presenting to you today. I'm one of the bank's information security officers. I've been with the bank for about a year and a half now. And it's been quite the roller coaster dealing with coming on board during the onset of the pandemic. A lot of things have been changing throughout the way that businesses do things. Prior to coming on board with Fmba, I spent over 20 years in law enforcement, with most of my time in the investigative side of the house, doing personal crimes, financial crimes, computer crimes, and homicides. And now this is a great change of pace, great company, and hopefully going to throw a lot of information out. If you have questions, feel free to ask questions, but hopefully you'll find it useful, and thanks for having me.
Thanks, James. Great to have you here. So First National, we are now in our 100th year of doing business right here in Alaska. And one thing that's remained the same for that entire time is our commitment to the communities we serve. And that's the reason we launched this Workshop Wednesdays webinar series, to be able to engage with you and provide you with some information and resources to support your banking experience and to help protect your assets. One thing to let you know, this webinar will be recorded. And so if you'd like, you can go back and rewatch it. You'll see on the screen there, the very bottom line, there's a web page that you can go to. So in the next couple of days, the recording of this will be posted there, as well as recordings of the previous webinars that we've done so far this year. And also that's the webpage you'll go if you want to register for future webinars that we'll be doing for the remainder of this year and then next year as well. So just to let you know, in order to avoid any sort of disruptions, your microphones have been muted and your video has been turned off, but we do want today to be interactive. And so at the bottom of your screen, you should see a little Q&A icon. At any time during the presentation, if you have a question, just click that icon, type in your question. We will be monitoring that. James will have 2 live question and answer sessions, and we hope to be able to get to those. So with that, James, I will turn it over to you.
All right, well, good morning, everybody, again. Today we're going to be putting a lot of information out there. We're going to be discussing, if I can get this PowerPoint to work correctly. Bear with me, it's always, I miss the old days when we could present in front of people versus this virtual stuff, so. Okay, so we're going to be talking today, covering counterfeit checks, altered checks, check washing, stolen, forged checks, spoofing, emails, and ultimately with all these type of financial fraud tendencies going on, the most important thing is how can we protect our business and even our personal selves from this growing trend. So for a business perspective, there's kind of 2 rules that you want to have to remember. One is having a customer-friendly environment, but offender hostile surrounding. This will keep you from being impacted and being victimized by fraud. And what do I mean by that, offender hostile surroundings, is that you want your business to be warming, inviting. You want it to attract people to come in and to feel safe to come into your business. However, there are things that we can do that will keep offenders at bay. Some simple things that you can implement is trying to have more than one employee in the location at a time, having your employees greeting the customer. What this does, which is a very simple task, but what it does is it acknowledges to the person coming into your business that you're aware that they're there. Other things that you can implement is lit areas and even video surveillance systems. So these are some of the things that you can implement in businesses that will help reduce your victim from being targeted for financial crimes. The other thing, and the second thing to remember, is employee training done right and doing business with customers and companies that you know and trust will help prevent you from being victims of fraud. Training not only on the onset of when they're coming in, but depending on what type of business that you all conduct, having continual training throughout the year to kind of reinforce those policies, those procedures, and how we do things. We have a tendency, once we get comfortable with doing a job, that it's muscle memory. We just kind of go through, and it becomes very easy for us to do. So by having continual training throughout the year, just reinforces those tasks that we should be doing and what we should be doing to pay attention while we're doing the job. And then the question is not if you're going to be a victim, but when and how much will you lose when it happens. I can tell you through the 20 plus years of doing law enforcement, I talked with thousands of people who were victimized of crimes. And financial crimes impact us, not only in a business level, but also a personal level. And it's a growing trend. And so some of the things that we're going to talk about today will hopefully help give you some tools and answers to prevent this from happening. So fraud is on the rise. I was curious during the pandemic how it affected fraud. And the one thing I found is that according to the Federal Trade Commission, in the year of 2020, there was a 32% increase in fraud reports. That is a significant amount of increase. And what does that equate to? In 2020, Americans lost $56 billion to fraud. Now, because of the pandemic, things and the way that fraud is being perpetrated upon us and our businesses has shifted. 13 billion of that was from the typical identity theft. They're stealing your information, they're creating credit cards, they're social engineering their way in to pretend that they're you. The other area, which has grown tremendously, $43 billion, was directly interaction between you as the victim and the person perpetrating the crime. And that is a significant increase from the years prior. So the culture of fraud is clearly shifting. The pandemic has created so many more points of vulnerabilities to families and business. So what is some of those vulnerabilities and how the shift? Well, with the advancement of these devices, cell phones that we have, it has created the access for communication. It used to be that when you had the old phone at your desk or at your house, somebody had to be able to call and you had to be in the office. Well, now with the invention of smartphones, we're always with our devices. We can receive calls and text messages. So the accessibility of us as individuals and as businesses has grown tremendously as well in that arena. So what are some of the things that we're seeing in Alaska that are problems for companies and individuals? Counterfeiting of business checks. This is a huge area. I can tell you that since I've been with the bank, I've seen a uptick in people trying to, counterfeit business checks. And now there are things that we can do, and we'll talk about how you can help catch some of these things from happening and prevent it. Corporate account takeovers, stolen checks, credit card fraud, email compromise, and check washing. These are things that I've seen in the past, year that have started growing, and things for you to be looking into. So counterfeiting checks. Fraudsters create checks using information from an intercepted check. And sometimes it doesn't have to be an intercepted check. Sometimes it could be one of the customers, depending on what type of business you do, you write them a check, and the individual then takes it and copies the information. Sometimes it's employees. And it's a very simple thing that all they need is a computer, a printer, and generic check stock that can be found at any local business supply store. And it is very easy for them to download a check program, print out the information, input the information from the MICR line on the back, put your company name, and a lot of times these people who are counterfeiting your checks, they are not using your business information. They're using your account numbers, and they are making other business names on the account. So the next few slides are some of those examples. Example of this one is Google in-app settlement program. It's in Larkspur, Alaska. If you were to receive this check, some of the things that you would look for, and if you are in the business of receiving checks, one of the preventative maintenance measures that you can do is train your employees to look at the item that they're receiving, to make sure that, it's not just, yes, it's a check, it's got ink printed on it, it's got an amount, and it's got a signature, but actually look at the check, take a few seconds to evaluate, does it make sense? If you are a company and you receive this check for services and it says Google in-app settlement program, and if you've been around in Alaska, I think Larkspur is not a place in Alaska, so it's those things. Does that type of make sense? Google in-app, probably not, but the MICR line would potentially contain your banking information, and if that item clears, then you would be out the $879, or if you accept the check and you provide services and it comes back fraudulent, you would be out the amount because you've already done the services. Some of the other, this is just another example of an altered check where somebody has taken a check that was either stolen out of mailboxes, somehow intercepted, and they have changed the pay to the order of. They can change the amount sometimes. And on printed checks, one of the things and how they do this is they will take a razor blade and they will scratch the ink off. So in this case, where you have the name Russell, they would take a razor blade and they can scratch the ink, and then they would retype it, and that's why you see the different coloration between what the name is and then the actual address. So these are some of the things that you have train your customers, or not your customers, but your employees to look at, so they're aware of the items that they're receiving in. Check washing. If you are a company to where you actually don't print checks, but you do handwrite them, then you're susceptible to check washing. And what that is when the fraudsters use common household chemicals. Acetone is primarily the #1 chemical that they use, and it's found in hand sanitizers, nail polish remover. They dip the check into the solution. Sometimes they'll block off the signature, but they'll erase all the other ink, and then they'll fill it out for to the next person, whoever they want it to be made out to, and for whatever amount, and they have your actual legit signature there. This accounts for $1 billion loss per year in the United States, which is a tremendous amount. This is an example where you can see some discoloration. It doesn't harm the check itself, but it does leave a slight discoloration behind. But they can maintain your signature, and they end up filling in the rest of the amount. This is another example of the check washing. So then the other thing, if check washing, counterfeit checks wasn't enough, one of the biggest things that are starting to see out there is spoofing and unsolicited emails. And that email aspect has been around for a while, but spoofing and dealing with technology on cell phones, that's something that is on the rise. And what spoofing is, it's the act of disguising a communication from an unknown source, making it appear to be a trusted source. And this is a very simple task that they can do with the invention of the smartphone and the technology and the apps that people have developed. There are applications out there that people can download onto their phone. They can input a phone number into the app of what they want that call to appear to be. And so when you receive and you answer the call, it appears to be a trusted number that you've had communication with in the past. It's a business that you do business with. However, once you end that communication, if you were to press redial, you would not be connected with the person you had just talked with. It will actually ring back to the business, the true business. So it's a one-way communication aspect for the suspect. So they get one bite of the apple, is that they are trying to keep you on the phone as long as possible, because if you hang up or they get disconnected and you try to call back, you will not get back talking with them. So again, high pressure tactics, because they know that if you disconnect, they want to keep you on the line as long as possible. The caller states that they need the information immediately. They threaten that you will lose money if you don't take action. They will even threaten that you potentially would be incarcerated or arrested if you fail to act. So if you all do get calls, evaluate what it is. Take your time before you act. Make sure that the request makes sense. If you get a call from a business that you've done business with and they're asking you to do something that is not typical, they're asking you to change the way that you make payments to them. On a personal level, if you get a call, and a lot of the scams that are coming in right now are the, if you fail to, this is the IRS or the Social Security office, if you fail to make this payment, you could be incarcerated. They will keep you on the phone. They want you to go to the store, buy either Walmart gift cards, Amazon cards, and then once you buy them, they'll want you to then take a photo of the back. And the reason that they're doing this is that once you take the photo of the information on the back, they then transfer those funds off those cards. The cards are now worthless, and they've achieved their goal. So if you do get this type of call, take a moment, evaluate, does it make sense? If somebody's asking you for personal information, asking you for money, does it make sense? You can always disconnect, and then you can go to the internet, or you can go to what you know of your Rolodex and find the number that you know for that place and call them back and inquire. Don't feel the pressure to stay on the phone or to do something hasty. The other thing that you keep in mind is fraudsters obtain login information from data breaches. What we can do to help minimize this is choose complex passwords or passphrases. Something that I know that, a lot of people had switched over to passwords, and I need to make it 20 characters, and I'll have to have special characters and all these different things. And a lot of companies are now moving to allow you to have passphrases where you can have maybe 5 words strung together with a capital or a lower, and a character, and it's easier for you to remember, and it's hard for the suspects to guess. So those are some of the things that that are moving towards to use passphrases. You can also use password applications that will store your information, passwords, and I would suggest that you get with your IT department to see if and have them vet password applications for business-wise. And on a personal level, there are applications through the App Store that will store your passwords securely. And last, use dual authentication. And, so that way it's an extra layer of protection. So we all fall victim or to this type of email compromise. Again, we look at who the email's from. We take a quick look. We said, oh, it's from Todd Allen. I know who Todd Allen is. But what the fraudster does is they can make slight changes. So if you get an email from somebody that you know, and in the text of the email or the body of the email, if the request doesn't make sense, that's where you need to be paused. So in this example, the two look very similar. If this came in as an email, you quickly glanced at it, you might not pause at the email and recognize that it's a fraud. But if you look now, the L and the I have been changed. Very subtle. This is what some of the things do. So if you get an email from Todd Allen, they're asking you to switch your payment method, something that, again, isn't your normal business operations, those are things that you should not respond to and not act on, but instead call the individual directly at a number that you know for the individual, not a number that's in the email, and verify it. Next are some of the examples of things that, we have received reference customers things. Again, this to us, this was suspicious. We don't, accept these type of requests through emails. But this is just an example that if you get something that is not normal and you know that it appears to be the customer, reach out to the customer and make sure that it is coming from them. Again, this is just another example of how the fraudsters will try to send information, requesting things to be changed. So it all comes down to one question: how much are you willing to lose? And with that, we'll pause for a second and see if there's any questions.
Thanks, James. Yeah, we do have several questions here. First one of our attendees had a situation where they sent a check to a lockbox and a fraudster intercepted that check and changed the name on the pay to the order of section. Is that something that you find to be common right now, fraud with lockboxes?
So with a mailbox that's secured, that is if you are to receive mail and you have one of the old-fashioned mailboxes that doesn't have a lock on it, I would encourage you that you would either go to a P.O. box or you change out your mailbox to have it a secure lockbox. There are instances, again, where you have a mailbox that's locked, and somehow in the transfer of the mail going from the mail carrier to the box, somehow the suspects get that information or they get a check. It does happen, but the a locked mailbox is the best method of minimizing your risk.
Thanks, James. Next question we have here. Do you have any specific recommendations on which password application to use and how the best way to store those passwords are?
I touched on it just briefly. If you are in a bigger company and you have an IT department, my recommendation is that you talk with your IT personnel to make sure that the way that you operate, the way that your system is set up, will accommodate, and that they find and they vet that program for your individual business. And on a personal level, there are several password keepers out there. Research, do due diligence, read reviews, look into the company and determine how it actually works. But there are several ones out there. With a few minutes of research on a personal level, you come across a couple good ones.
Thanks, James. Next question we have here. You had mentioned dual authentication for passwords. If you'll just remind and cover that one more time. What is dual authentication for passwords?
What this is it's allowing a second layer to protection. So it's not just a one password. So now a lot of applications are going to where you have your password, and then prior to getting access, they will send you a verification code that's texted directly to the phone number on your profile. And then you would enter in that series of numbers, or that whatever they send you, into the app. And then that way it's verifying that you are have permission to be able to go ahead and go into it. So again, it's only sending out that to the phone number on file.
Great. Next question we have is there a way to prevent my checks from being washed?
So if your company is using handwritten checks, and whether it's your company or you as a person, my recommendation is that you use a Uniball gel ink pen. And the difference between it is that if you use that type of pen, the ink actually embeds into the paper versus just being on the top. And with the ink being embedded into the paper, the acetone solution does not work on those checks.
Good to know. So Uniball gel, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Next question, and this kind of has to do with those high pressure calls and whatnot. I get calls and texts from fraudsters all the time asking for personal information. How do I stop that from happening?
So if you're receiving those calls on your cell phone, you're able to go in, depending on your type of phone, but most of the smartphones now have the ability to go in and block phone numbers. You can block the phone numbers so that way that you don't get a call. Doesn't mean that they won't generate another call. And as far as the text messages go, if you get a text message, and we're starting to see a lot of these I get them all the time, your Wells Fargo account, your Alaska USA account, various things, your Charles Schwab, whatever it has been compromised, and they want you to click on the link in the text. And I would encourage you not to. If you get a text message that's saying that your account's been compromised, don't click on the link. Don't, just delete that. Contact your business or the company directly and make sure that things are okay and validate it that way. Don't click on things just out of curiosity.
Thanks, James. And thanks to the attendees for submitting those questions. Just as a reminder to anybody, use the chat function or that Q&A icon and we will have another session at the end. So James, if you carry on the presentation, please.
Well, let me again. Okay, so check fraud, ACH fraud is a race against time that begins once the check is presented to the bank or location where it's cashed. And what do I mean about that is once an item is presented to the financial institution, that starts a clock. And the earlier that you're able to detect fraud, the greater the chances that you are going to be able to recover your funds. So if you see something that in reviewing your accounts, you see a check that you didn't write, you see a credit or a debit come out of your account, contact your financial institution immediately and report it. The sooner that we're notified, the greater the chance is that you won't be out. So it's, again, race against time. And so talking about that is active awareness. We need to shift from reactive to active awareness, especially in this time where there's a growing trend of fraud, of they're trying to, especially with businesses right now, and businesses that are on the larger side, these people who do this type of stuff are aware that you potentially have money, and they're wanting to take advantage of your high volumes of checks that you write with the hopes that you're not going to catch it. So we need to shift from reactive to active, where we're monitoring these things. And there are some things that we can implement here within our financial institution. There's Positive Pay, there's ACH or programs out there that will shift you from reactive to active, and it will help you prevent fraud from happening. So there are programs out there that we have that can assist you in this. You don't have to do it manually. We can allow technology to assist us. So Fmba Stats for 2020, last year, the tellers and people in the bank had identified 104 fraudulent items, and that amounted to $580,000, which is a huge amount of what we prevented our customers from losing. And since we've done the tracking since 2002, we have identified over 1,900 fraudulent items with the savings of $18 million. So that just gives you some statistics that shows, that, this is a real thing. It affects companies. It could affect your bottom line. So again, we need to shift from, reactive to active to help minimize the loss. So are we doing enough to effectively reduce the risk posed by check fraud and ACH? So one of the questions is, you never know what you might find in the trash. So if you all, whether it's business or personal, on a business, make sure that you have protocols in place, that there's a lot of shredding companies out there. There's services that will provide you containers that are locked, that you put the documentation in those containers. They come and they dispose of it. If you don't, depending on the size of your business, you could have a simple shredder in your office or a personal house, have a shredder and shred the information. Because the suspects that perpetrate these type of crimes, they're organized. They're just, not out there trying to guess what they're going to do and what they can get away with. They are sophisticated. They take notes, and some of these next slides will show you examples of, here's one that says, they write a list, need more payroll, need credit profiles, need bank accounts. They're writing out basically a grocery list of things that they need to acquire and they're looking for. So if they can go through your garbage, your paperwork, and find information, they're going to utilize it. And so once they have information, they then write a list. Okay, well, maybe we can go to Capital One, MasterCard, apply for these type of accounts. They can create personal checks. They write out, okay, well, in this example, it's First National Bank, and they're putting down there is what check numbers, to start with. So they're very well organized. They put out Social Security numbers, and what, based off of what they're finding out, what can they apply for? What type of cards should they apply for? They write out the list of questions like, what's your mother's name, ancestry, and that shows you where they're getting it from. They're getting from ancestry.com. They're getting it from Google, ID cards. So if you get credit card applications, you get anything with personal information, whether it's yourselves or your customers' information, make sure you're taking the time and disposing of those things properly, because if you don't, again, it's not if, it's when you're going to be victimized in financial crime. So where are the fraudsters getting the information? Ancestry, they're getting it from Google and social media platforms now. They're looking to see who you're following. When I suggested, when I worked for the PD, I talked with thousands of kids when I was doing the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, and talked with parents as well. And one of the things is that on social media, on these apps, I would encourage them not to use their full names, their real names, and so that way that helps to reduce people from connecting the dots of who's who, who's your family members, who's your mom, who's your dad, who's your kids. It makes it harder for the suspects to be able to find information if you're not putting it out there to the masses. What are they looking for? They're looking for maiden names, they're looking for previous addresses, and they're looking for job history. Again, all information that's easily searchable. For the professionals, if you have a LinkedIn account, you outline where you've worked and the things that you've done. So you can do city searches for previous for addresses. There's a wealth of information out there that they know how to data mine to be able to answer these questions, to compromise your either business or your personal accounts. So you need to know how to get in front of the fraud. So some of the things that you can do is ongoing security awareness programs. Seek out best practices. Talk with other people in your community, other people in your industry, to see what is recommended, what's the best practices. Because as we start to change the way to help prevent fraud, the suspects are then trying to go back and do their homework to figure out, how can I now change our pattern and our behavior to defeat what they've now had in place. So seek out best practices, stronger passwords, dual authenticated, understand your security threats, understand where am I susceptible, what type of business do I have, where potentially do I have these threats, and make sure employees are trained properly, not just on the onset of them being employed, but having short little huddle sessions every once in a while to kind of remind them so we don't get complacent. And then use fraud prevention tools. Again, for the banking industry, for us, we can offer you positive pay, ACH filters. There's things that we have that you can talk with us about implementing that can help protect and make it from a manual thing to a computerized, using computers to be able to help eliminate or reduce your exposure. Know your risk, If you operate a lot in emails, do not put anything out, send anything confidential in the email unless the email is encrypted. Be careful of using USB drives and unsecured networks. Make sure that you know who your downstream vendors are and suppliers, because again, those things can potentially put you at risk. And implement clean desk policies where when your employees leave for the day, that all personal information, or customers' personal information is locked securely, either in desk or counters. Check the ingoing and outgoing mail. As far as what the previous question was, is that if you all do receive mail, I would encourage you that if it's not a locked box, that you look into getting a secured mailbox. It greatly reduces your chances of being victim of fraud. And then information throwaway in a trash. You know, there are recyclers, again, shredding companies out there that will dispose of your personal information. Make sure that you're not throwing things in the trash, because there are people who will spend time going through dumpsters looking for information. Protect yourself, train your employees. And when I talk about dual control, it's two persons. If you are in a shop, try to have two people if you can, working in the store. If you're handling large amounts of cash, use dual control. It just provides an extra layer of safety and the reduction of loss. Use a standalone computer for banking. Never connect to unknown Wi-Fi when you're doing your banking. Talk with your financial institutions. Talk, with law enforcement. Figure out what your trends are, what's going on, where you're potentially susceptible in your area, your type of business, so you can help safeguard it. Have good IT personnel. Somebody that is good at what they're doing, reliable, and they can help keep you out of a lot of trouble. Again, keep in touch with your banking institution. They're a wealth of information, and they can help guide you through some of this stuff as well. So some of the other things that we've seen prior to me joining this great team at Fmba, I was with the Alaska State Troopers, and I managed a case, or I had a case involving Atm Skimmers. And this is an example of a skimmer that was placed over on an ATM, and it reads your card information, and then there's a small little camera that is recording your PIN number. This is another example of an ATM skimmer where the device is placed over top of the original card reader, and it's capturing your credit card information. PIN pad overlays is another thing that people have done to obtain your credit card information or your debit card information. So what do they do once they have it? Once they have your debit/credit card information, all they need are blank magnetic cards. This is a picture of a series of cards. On each one of these cards, there's bank account information and the PIN codes written on the other side. So the suspects get these we'll go back here. Once they obtain your information, they then use devices to transfer the data onto these cards. And if you can look, that's quite a few cards that are in a bag. The case I dealt with prior to coming over here, the suspects had obtained over $100,000 from these type of cards. And So it is something that is out there. My recommendation is that when you go to use your ATM card at a ATM, just look and see, hey, is there something different, something unusual out there? Does something not look right? To let you all know, with us here at Fmba, all the ATMs that we have in place, we do inspect on a regular basis. And so we do monitor it. We know that it does happen in the United States and elsewhere. So we switch from reactive to proactive, and we take steps to make sure that that doesn't happen here. So some of the things, again, solutions to help in this race. We have Positive Pay. It transmits a file of issued checks to the bank on a daily basis. Verification of the check payee, the dollar amount, and the check number. Again, this makes it super easy to where it's going to where instead of you having to review all your checks on a daily basis, you're inputting the information and you're allowing the computer to do the work for you. And so when we get the checks, if it doesn't match the inputted information, it gets kicked out. Then we also have ACH fraud prevention. Text message or email alerts from unapproved ACH debits trying to clear, and quickly make a pay return decision on the items. So these are things that you can talk with us about if interested. Does anybody have any questions? I guess we're to Lewis now.
Thanks, James. Yep, we do have a couple. Two questions received about the ATM skimmers, and you answered the first, but I'll just reiterate that. And the question was, does First National Bank check our ATMs regularly for those skimmers? And James said that we do. We try to take that responsibility off of our customers and do that. The next question was a follow-up question. Are they relatively obvious, or are they really difficult to see for a consumer that's going in to use the ATM? Is that something that they're going to be able to see easily?
So we'll go back to a couple of these slides. So some of them are going to be more difficult and other are going to be obvious. When this one, if you looked and it's on a goes overlay, you're going to see this half of the sticker, and it's not going to make sense to you. It's like, hey, this is kind of weird. It looks like it continues up underneath it. You will, if you pay attention, you will be able to see majority of the times you would notice that there's something different about the ATM. But yeah, you can, if you look, some of them are a little bit more difficult, like this one with the overlay. But just kind of be mindful when you go to use your ATM or a ATM, whether it's at a financial institution, at a restaurant, wherever it is, before you plug it in, if something looks a little off, if in doubt, it's like kind of like one of those things when I was growing up with my mom saying, if in doubt, throw it out. Meaning if you're in doubt, don't go to a different branch, go to a different location. And then also, if you see something, advise the company or the location of the establishment where you're at and say, hey, this looks a little off, I'm not sure, and let them be aware, because we have to protect each other. We're in this together. We have to make sure that not only are we protecting ourselves, but if we can help and protect other customers and other people in our community, we all win.
Thanks, James. You'd mentioned previously, identity theft and people getting credit cards and loans in their name. And we had a question here. How do I find out if somebody got a credit card or a loan in my name that I'm aware of?
Okay. My recommendation would be that everybody's entitled to 3 free credit reports a year. And so if you go into annualcreditreport.com, you can go in and request a free credit report, and that way you verify your information. You can do it every 4 months, and you can look and see, okay, is there any new accounts that I don't recognize? The other thing is some of the credit card companies out there now are issuing FICO scores on a monthly basis, and you can monitor those scores and see, is it going down? If it's going down, then what's causing that? If your debt to income ratio hasn't changed, you haven't applied for any new credit, and all of a sudden your credit score drops 100 points, what's the cause of it? And I would then go in and pull your credit report and see what's going on.
Thanks, James. Next question we have here, can I block my credit so nobody can apply for a credit card or loan in my name?
If you are a victim of identity theft, you can report it to the credit bureau, and they can implement some additional features on your credit. They can flag your credit as a victim of identity theft. So there are things that you can do. Yes.
Great. And the last question we have here is, which fraud trends should we be most concerned about in the upcoming months and years?
Yeah. So for me, on a business side, corporate counterfeit checks, that is something that we're seeing on a more regular basis. And those amounts, those dollar amounts, are also increasing. So monitor your accounts, whether it's a business account or a personal account. Check your accounts daily. If you write a lot of checks, I would encourage you to look into positive pay. Again, it's being reactive to proactive. It's allowing the system to work for, the computer to work for itself, and it's catching those things. So I would definitely encourage you to do that. And if you see things, report it immediately. But you have to be proactive on your accounts. It doesn't take long for somebody to drain your accounts. And even if your accounts are drained, it's possible that you could recover some of your money or all your money, but there's a time process that it takes for that to happen. So then can your business function with a zero balance, and or that loss that you just took while an investigation takes place and why things are underway. So the big things right now is just monitor your accounts, and if you, on a personal level, go into your account daily, and business-wise, I would say the same things, but utilize the tools that are there to make your life easier.
Thanks, James. And one other trend that I will mention, because I've seen this as well. So if anybody on this webinar received a Paycheck Protection Program loan, there are fraudsters out there posing to be the Small Business Administration, reaching out to them, saying that they qualify for more money on top of what they already received, and asking for information and sending fraudulent links. So if you received a Paycheck Protection Program, and somebody posing as the SBA is saying you qualify for more money, contact your financial institution to find out if that information is correct or not. So it looks like that's all the questions that we have for now. So once again, James, thanks for the valuable information. To all of our guests, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your very thoughtful questions. That really helped out a lot. Feel free to get a hold of us. The screen here that James has up, this is where we will be posting a recording of today's webinar, as well as previous webinars that we've done earlier this year. What you'll be able to go to find future webinars to register for. And then the information on this slide here is some contact information about how to get a hold of your banker. And so that web page there It is location based. And so if you go to that site, it'll give some information about individuals at the bank you can contact with more questions. We also have our customer service line there. And then finally, the address there at the bottom, James had talked about positive pay, ACH fraud prevention, and additional services that we offer. You can get more information on the webpage, but of course, it's easiest just to call us. So one more time, thank you to everybody for joining, and have a wonderful day. Take care.
Thank you.